police are getting closer to finding answers for the family of a man who was shot and stabbed to death in Sydney 8 years ago. One of his alleged killers has been arrested by Thai police and brought back to Sydney to face murder charges. What happens when a rising star in the world of kickboxing ends up on death row in a foreign country? Sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? Well, this is the wild, real-life story of Antonio Bagnato, an Aussie fighter who went from throwing punches in the ring to being accused of murder, not once, but twice. His life took a dark turn after a brutal killing in Sydney, followed by an even more shocking crime in Thailand involving a former Hells Angels member. Add in a prison escape, torture claims, and a dramatic return to Australia, and you've got one of the craziest crime stories you've probably never heard of. Antonio Bagnato didn't grow up in the spotlight, but he made his way into it with fists, sweat, and raw talent. Born in Sydney, he made a name for himself in the brutal world of kickboxing. Strong, confident, and fast on his feet, he quickly rose through the local fight scene. He wasn't just another gym rat. People saw him as a real contender, a future champion maybe. But outside the ring, Banado was mixing with some questionable company. He trained at St. Michael's Fight Club, a place known not just for fitness but also for its shady characters. Among them was his cousin Diego Carbone, who would later play a major role in everything that went wrong. While Antonio was focused on becoming a sports star, he was also building connections to the criminal world. No one really knows when it happened, whether it was financial trouble, bad influences, or sheer recklessness. But things started spiraling quickly. Then came the name that changed everything: Bradley Dillon. Bradley wasn't a gangster, he was just a 25-year-old cafe owner, a young father trying to make ends meet, but he owed someone money. Not a huge amount, just $2,300. You might think something like that could be sorted with a few angry texts or a threat, but this debt triggered something far worse. In August 2014, Dillon was lured to Leichhardt Marketplace in Sydney. He probably thought it was a peaceful meetup to settle the debt, but what happened next was brutal. CCTV footage later showed him trying to run for his life, bleeding and panicked before collapsing outside a supermarket. He'd been stabbed and shot multiple times. Paramedics couldn't save him. The attack was so sudden, so violent, that police knew it wasn't random. It was personal. Within days, eyes were on Banado and Carbone. Detectives tracked down witnesses, checked phone records, and pulled security footage. The evidence started stacking up fast. But by the time charges were laid, Antonio had vanished. He didn't just go into hiding, he left the country entirely. No dramatic airport arrest, no police chase. He was simply gone. Where does a young Aussie fighter with blood on his hands disappear to? While the investigation in Australia kept growing, Antonio was thousands of kilometers away in Thailand. What was he doing there? Laying low, living it up? That part was still a mystery, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. In November 2015, another name hit the news: Wayne Schneider, a muscular guy with a long criminal record and ties to the Hells Angels. He'd moved to Thailand too, allegedly to escape attention, but also to stay connected to serious underworld business. One night, Schneider vanished. Neighbors reported hearing a commotion outside his luxury villa, loud noises and a white pickup speeding away. The next day, police found his house a mess. His car was still there, his door had been kicked in, and there was blood everywhere. For days, no one could find him. Then, in a quiet patch of jungle outside of Paya, a grim discovery: Schneider's body, half-naked, beaten and dumped in a shallow grave. The cause of death? Blunt force trauma. He'd been beaten to death. The Thai police moved quickly, and CCTV footage led them to Antonio Bagnato. It turns out that Banado and Schneider weren't just random expats crossing paths. They knew each other. And from what police pieced together, They weren't on good terms by the time Schneider died. The theory was that they'd had a major falling out, possibly over drugs, money, or power. Police caught Banado trying to cross the border into Cambodia. Just days after the murder, he was arrested and thrown into a Thai prison. From there, things got even worse. Banado claimed he was innocent, that he didn't kill Schneider and that it was all a setup. But the Thai courts didn't buy it. He was charged with murder, deprivation of liberty, and concealing a body. His sentence? Death. Suddenly, the Aussie fighter, who had once been on top of the world, found himself sitting in a Bangkok prison, facing execution. It was a shocking turn of events. People back home were stunned and confused. Was this the same guy who had disappeared after the murder of Bradley Dillon? Antonio Bagnado's time in Thailand's Klong Prem Central Prison was as brutal as it sounds. Overcrowded, violent, and full of disease, it was a place where survival was the only goal. He was kept in maximum security, isolated and subjected to physical and psychological abuse. He later claimed he was tortured by guards, enduring beatings, sleep deprivation, and constant mental torment. Despite all of this, his story didn't end there. Banado's lawyers fought to appeal his sentence, and in time, they succeeded. The Thai Court of Appeal downgraded his death sentence to life in prison. But even with that, his past caught up with him. In 2022, Australia made a move. The murder of Bradley Dillon had never been forgotten, and Australian authorities arranged to have Banado extradited back to Sydney. His return wasn't dramatic. There were no press conferences or fanfare, just quiet, tight security and a one-way trip to jail. When he landed in Australia in 2022, a lot had changed. The murder case against him was reopened. The evidence, the witness statements, the CCTV footage, all of it came flooding back. This time, though, they had a new piece of the puzzle: Banado's history. A death sentence in Thailand doesn't exactly help your defense. Prosecutors argued that Banado and his cousin Diego Carbone had lured Dillon to Leichhardt Marketplace with the intent to ambush him. Though no one saw Banado pull the trigger, the case was built on the theory of joint responsibility. Carbone had already been sentenced to at least 18 years in prison for his role, and now it was Banado's turn. The trial in 2024 ended with Banado being sentenced to 17 years and 3 months in prison, with a non-parole period of 13 years. His time served in Thailand was taken into account, but the judge made it clear this was a serious, calculated crime, and justice had to be served. For Bradley Dillon's family, there was no celebration, just quiet relief that after nearly a decade, someone was finally held accountable. Antonio Bagnado's story is one that makes you stop and think. How does someone with talent, drive, and a future in sport end up caught in 2 murder cases across 2 countries? He wasn't born into crime. He had everything going for him. But somewhere along the way, something shifted, and one bad decision led to another. In the end, it cost him everything: his freedom, his legacy, and his future. Now, Banado sits in a prison cell in New South Wales. His story isn't just about violence. It's about lost potential and how quickly things can spiral out of control when you're chasing the wrong things, with the wrong people, in the wrong places. Antonio Bagnado's rise and fall is a tragic reminder that no matter how talented you are, one mistake can destroy everything.